This was always something that I find this incredibly important in starting your ability to get to the slow point. Find your slow point and build on it. You've heard all of our Blayze coaches talk about, right? We want to start with our exits. Exits last longest. Yeah, of course, right? We want to start with that. But we also want you to make sure that you've got a good entry, because we know there's a lot of time on the entry as well. But I'll bug Colin on this because I do this all the time, which is, and I have to fight myself to do this, especially at a track that you've been to, or maybe it's a track you haven't been to in a year or two. You go out and you're like, dude, I'm going to get after it. What do you typically do? You put your brake markers first, right? You're like, I'm going to get after it. And what ends up happening, you put your hair on fire. The car is out of control. It's not in the right place. And it takes forever to calm down. And if you simply start with your exits first and then work on your entry. So what that meant was this. I drew this out. And for the people that have heard this story before, I'm going to tell it again because it absolutely is something that I picture every time that I go ride or drive. I mentioned Freddie Spencer, right? So Freddie Spencer, amazing guy. We didn't get to ride with him very often, but here, you're riding with a 3-time world champ. And of course, honestly, we all went pretty well at the time, but you're riding with a world champ. So you're a little nervous, right? So you go ride with Freddie and you're riding with Freddie and you do like a lap, you're hanging with him and you're like, okay, really? This is it? And then he'd come off a corner. And what I drew here is on these exits, he'd get the bike in the right spot and he'd just lay a strip of rubber right off the corner. And you're just like, damn, okay, great. The thing is he was actually going to the brakes really early that lap. He guaranteed that he got the bike in that spot. And the next lap, he'd lay another strip of rubber off there. But then he had gone to the brakes here. And then the next lap, he'd lay another strip of rubber off the exit. And he just kept incrementally building his entry up. And then when he finally got to say like right here, right, say he got way in there deep and he screwed up his exit, then he knew it was too much. But he would do it in such a methodical fashion. And so I kind of overdrew this. Freddie would do this per corner. So you'd ride with Freddie, and for the first lap, you'd ride with him. You're like, okay, he's a world champion, really? Not that big a deal. And the second lap, you kind of got your tongue hanging out on the exits. And by the third lap, you don't even see him. And you're just like, what just happened? And by him building this, I'm going to get my exits first. And then after I get my exits, I'm going to start bringing my entry up to match my exit. That is something that it puts your brain in a position to accept this, because as soon as you go and you're like, well, dude, I was here a year ago and I was at the 2 brake marker. The first lap, I'm going to the 2 brake marker, and your hair is on fire. And so your hair is on fire. And then the next lap, you're completely discombobulated. And so you lose that control, right? You lose that control to put the car where you want it to be. I put this as finding your slow point, finding your reference points, or finding your slow point, find where you're releasing the brake is the biggest reference point, because once you found it, you can manipulate your exit off of it and you can manipulate your entry that comes to it. But if you don't have that reference, you're never going to get it. So that's why this is a huge piece of our puzzle.